Let me begin by introducing Alan Dershowitz. He is well known, I imagine, to everybody in this. Jeremy Ben-Ami is the executive director of J Street, which describes itself as a pro-Israel, pro-peace lobby in Washington, D.C. Let me begin, Jeremy, with you. You believe, I presume, in a two-state peace process, a two-state resolution with a divided Israel and a cessation of settlements. Is that correct?
It's correct. If I may,
surely,
with your indulgence, I just want to say thank you very much to the 92nd Street Y. Thank you very much to you, Elliot, and particularly Professor Dershowitz for being willing to share the stage this evening for this conversation. It has been a long time that I have watched you and your articulate advocacy for Israel, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. So with that having been said, the whole purpose of J Street is to support a two-state solution, not simply as an aspiration, but really as the existential need of the state of Israel as a Jewish and a democratic home.
Okay, two states, and I added two other pieces to that. Cessation of settlements, is that part of your platform?
Absolutely, and of course, ends up being a rollback.
Okay, we'll get into that in a moment. And right. Jerusalem, two sentences, what is the answer to Jerusalem?
Ultimately, the city of Jerusalem will be the capital of both peoples. It has to be worked out. The exact details will need to be worked out.
All right. We are the protesters were outside. Let's keep this civil in here for a moment. All right.
Ultimately, you know, I lived in Jerusalem for 3 years, and I know the city very, very well. My parents are actually buried on the Mount of Olives. I know the city in and out. There are areas of the city that were Arab villages for hundreds of years that were annexed to Israel after '67, and those will become the capital of the new Palestinian state.
Divided Israel.
Divided land of...
Fine, all right. Alan here's chomping at the bit. Let's go through those same three fundamental questions. You agree with the two-state solution, cessation of settlements, and Jerusalem. Your answer would be what?
I believe in the two-state solution. I think the two-state solution is necessary to keep Israel both Jewish and democratic. I have been against civilian settlements since 1973, so there's nothing new here. I do not think they are the major obstacle to peace. I think the Palestinian refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish democracy is the major obstacle to peace, and terrorism began before the settlements, but I would like to see the settlements ended. I would like to see some of the areas around Jerusalem which are highly developed, Ma'ale Adumim, Gilo, retained by Israel with land swaps, and those were actually agreed upon in principle at Camp David and Taba, and even the Palestinians
and let me introduce you. Jerusalem is the capital of two separate nations,
I think
which Jeremy had said.
Well, I think, first of all, Jerusalem must remain the eternal capital of Israel. I think once Jerusalem is divided, it's not the decision of the Israelis what the capital of a Palestinian state. If there is a disarmed, peaceful Palestinian state without terrorism, the Palestinian state should be able to decide where its capital is, just as Israel should decide where its capital is, and the United States and other countries in the world should recognize that and send their embassies to whatever place Israel decides. Now, that's one area where we disagree.
Well, you just asked my question. Do you disagree with what Alan just said about where the capital of Israel can or should or must be?
Well, I don't actually know what the disagreement would be. If there's a peace agreement and the capital of Israel is in Jerusalem, why would the embassies not be in Jerusalem?
The disagreement is that I think currently the United States should place its embassy in Jerusalem.
Right, but prospectively you would both agree that the embassies would be in Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
But J Street has taken a position publicly that they would oppose the United States currently putting its embassy in Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, actually, the truth is I actually don't think we've taken a position on that. I think any move at this point that upsets the status quo and moves things in an unproductive direction would not be helpful. I don't see any real reason why the embassy couldn't be there, but the move would be unhelpful.
Sounds like a position to me.
Yeah,
I think that Iran has made it very clear that it will not, unless something happens relatively dramatic, I predict here tonight, Iran will develop the ability to make nuclear weapons within a 2 or 3 month period. That is, it might not...
2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 years?
No, let me be clear what I mean. It will, within 2 or 3 years, develop the ability within 2 or 3 months to develop a nuclear weapon. That is, it won't turn the final screw. It will be developing the weapons along a 2-track civilian system. It won't put the final touches on it, but within 2 years, it will be within 3 months, at any time it chooses to, of finalizing the nuclear weapon. It already has the delivery system, and so I think we're on the verge of a very, very, very critical period of time, and I think this is the time for sanctions.
So you would impose sanctions right now?
Absolutely.
And give them how long to be effective?
Well, I would...
And how do you define effectiveness?
Well, no, I don't... I think once you impose the sanctions, we're not putting a time limit on anything, because what are the United States going to do? If the sanctions don't work, the United States is not going to attack Iran. It is simply off the table. And nobody in Israel believes that would happen. Nobody, more importantly, nobody in Iran believes that will happen. And I think nobody in Washington believes that it happens. So sanctions are an end in itself for the United States. As far as Israel's concerned, I'm surely not going to second-guess Israel's existential decision if it has to make this horrible decision, because the consequences of an attack by Israel on Iran would be horrendous. But we're talking about not good, better, best. We're talking about bad, very, very bad, horrendous, and unacceptable. And if Israel had to make that decision, I need to know whether J Street would be out there publicly opposing Israel's existential decision to protect its citizens from a nuclear attack by attacking preemptively or preventively the Iranian nuclear weapons. I think everybody's entitled to know the answer to that question.
We'll get there in a second. Before you get to that very question, which you will get to in a moment, do you agree with Alan about the need for sanctions right now?
Not right now, but I think we're really close. I mean, I think the President indicated even in recent days that it's time. You know, the Iranians need to pony up. They need to answer. The offer's on the table. If they don't answer, our preference is to go for multilateral, not unilateral sanctions to get as much of the world united.
If that fails, do you...
Then unilateral as a last resort.
So within a month we have sanctions?
Well, I mean, you know, however long it is, but
one way or
it's
another,
very
there's
close.
sanctions.
I mean, we really are at decision time for the Iranians. The offer's on the table. They can't drag their feet. We can't be played, and it is time for action.
Do you agree with Alan's analysis of where that then takes us?
Well, I think definitely the agreement is that sanctions won't work. You know, that's one of the saddest things about all of this, is that the sanctions just don't have a track record of working. It'll make us feel good because we actually applied a stick to somebody not doing something we wanted them to do. But let's not have any illusions that sanctions actually have the impact on behavior that we want them to have.
Do you agree with Alan that the United States itself should not take military action off the table?
I didn't say should not. I said would not.
Well,
I didn't make the normative argument.
Do you think we should?
I think we should not take that option off the table.
Right. Okay. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think it would be a disaster to take military action.
No, that wasn't the question. Should we take the option off the table?
Well, it's always there, lurking in the background, but I mean, to even consider it is ridiculous.
So you've taken it off the table? Okay,
so
there's a difference then.
So now answer the question that Alan posed. I think there was a question in there. There was a question in there. Do you want to answer his question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the question is not, does Israel have the right? Yes, it has the right, and I will not question the right. What I will question is whether or not it is the right decision. I think that the actual
Who should make that decision, you or Israel?
No, Israel should make that decision, of course. But that doesn't mean that I forfeit my right to question it. You know, this decision has consequences not simply for Israel. This decision has consequences for the United States. This is a matter of national security priority for the United States because our troops are in the region. Our interests are all over the world. Our people and our citizens will be put at risk by that Israeli decision. So I have every right in the world to question and to answer.
We'll get to that in a second, but I'm actually more curious for a moment. You said within 2 to 3 years they will have the capacity to create one within 3 months. What is your evidentiary foundation for that 2 to 3 year window?
I think it comes from the recent discovery of the area near which is only a secret area, which can only be used for military development. I think that the Atomic Energy Commission has now looked much more critically at the time frame. I think one of the worst things that ever happened under the Bush administration was the disclosure of that intelligence, that unintelligent intelligence report of a few years ago, which said that Iran had essentially abandoned efforts to develop nuclear weapons. I think everybody now realizes that was either a mistake or a deliberate deception. I think British intelligence, many European intelligence agencies now see the 2 or 3 year framework as an approximation.
There's even a division. There's a division of opinion within Israeli military and security. I mean, so there's divisions of opinion on all of this.
The history
is it
not the case that historically the track record is that when predictions like that are made, people acquire capacities much sooner than the intelligence expectations?
Not at all. I mean, look, the people have been predicting what Alan is saying for probably the last decade, that Iran is 2 or 3 years away from doing this. So this is going to continue to be the case. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not a military intelligence analyst, so I don't know what the exact number of years is, and there's no question that the possibility is there, and therefore we have to act as if it's real, even if it's a small possibility. The U.S. and Israel both have to act to do everything they can to prevent this, but I don't think that Alan is in any better position than I am to speculate as to the exact amount of time, and there are conflicts of opinion in the intelligence community. Well, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that, particularly for the American Jewish community. I mean, if I just sit around with 3 people in my family and I ask what bagel should I buy, I get 5 opinions. I mean, how is it possible that we need to have only one?
But you all agree on bagels.
But we all agree on bagels.
And we agree on bagels,
except for those with gluten allergies.
No. There are 8 types of bagels. That's not
right,
bad.
Exactly. I mean, I think the notion that this community of 5 to 6 million people can speak with one voice when it comes to this complex topic is ludicrous. And for too long, the voices that have spoken in Washington, in national politics, and in the American Jewish community, for me, have not spoken for me. They have not represented me.
Well, let's change them. Let's change them. And
I think it is both impractical and actually disingenuous to suggest that we should go into an organization that does not see the world, does not see the conflict in the same way that we do, and work within that organization to get our voices heard.
See, I think they do see the conflict the same way you do, with some exceptions. And I think we can compromise on those exceptions and present a united voice. You know, if the 8 bagel manufacturers had to lobby Congress, even if they have very different products, I represented a number of organizations like the Motion Picture Association of America. They compete all the time. But when they go to Congress, they go with a single voice. What they do is they compromise their differences. They argue their differences out among them, and then they present a single voice to Congress, which is far more effective. I think what you're doing is diluting the voice of all the 5 or 6 million and creating a false picture of division about central points which don't exist, and exaggerating the differences at the extremes.
And I think that we are actually doing a great... I think that the service that is being done for Israel by creating a home within the American Jewish community where people can feel comfortable saying that they are pro-Israel, where they can feel comfortable having a conversation about difficult...
But they don't feel comfortable. You've allowed the university...
Alan, I did not interrupt you.
Okay, oh, I didn't think I was interrupting. I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Okay. I was interrupting them.
All right, okay, let's calm.
And now I've lost my train of
thought. All right, but let me ask a question. Alan, in that case, if you believe one organization, why not JPAC instead of AIPAC?
Well, because AIPAC has been the standard traditional organization, and JPAC can become that organization if it works within. Now, what I worry about is truth in labeling. If the university JPAC does not have to describe itself as pro-Israel, then there's a problem of truth in labeling. You can't be pro-Israel to Congress, and that's the way you get into Congress, into the front door, and then you try to attract kids on university campuses by saying, we're not pro-Israel, we're pro-peace and pro-Palestinian.
Wait.
That's false advertising.
What I think the fundamental purpose of J Street is to change the definition of what it means to be pro-Israel from your definition. This notion that there has to be an anti for every pro.
I don't think I'm pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. Why does there have to be an anti?
So why can't our student group be that too? That's what I don't understand.
But I wouldn't ever deny that I'm pro-Israel, and your college and university students want to take pro-Israel off their banner.
And
they
it's
don't
not
want
true.
to be pro-Israel.
It is not true. That decision was never made. It was a false report in the Jerusalem Report. There was no vote and no decision. It wouldn't be allowed by J Street. We would not allow that.
So J Street would not allow any university to identify as J Street unless they had pro-Israel
unless they accept the principle. No, on the banner is not important.
I'm talking about truth in advertising. I'm talking about truth in advertising. Do they have to describe themselves publicly as pro-Israel, yes or no?
They have to be pro-Israel.
I understand that.
Let's talk about the
Finkel
reality.
says he's pro-Israel.